Council is reconvened. We have one public hearing this evening. Speakers will have 3 minutes. There will be no yielding of time. Speakers should begin their remarks by telling the council their names and cities of residence, and if they feel comfortable doing so, their home addresses. If you are here to answer questions only when your name is called, come to the podium, state your name, and note that you are available for questions of council. On the presentation monitor on the wall, you'll see your time counting down. Speakers must stay on the topic of the hearing and must direct their comments to the council members. Please refrain from profane or obscene speech. Direct your comments to council as a whole, and please refrain from individual or personal attacks. Councilwoman Black, will you please put Council Bill 855 on the floor?
Yes, Mr. President. I move that Council Bill 855 be ordered published.
It has been moved and seconded. The public hearing for Council Bill 855 is open. May we have the staff report?
Good evening, Lisa Lumley, Division of Real Estate. So we are here. Real Estate is representing the team to discuss the contract that is coming through. It is an exchange contract. The city currently owns the property at 2863 Fairfax Street, and we would exchange the property for a like size with the property across the street at 2868 Fairfax Street. Included in this transaction, PHC would also pay to the city $650,000 for future but determined park improvements that would be deposited in escrow. That is the sum of the transaction. You want to talk about the park improvements?
Yes. Scott Gilmore, Deputy Executive Director of Parks and Planning. So this project was started back in 2015. Excel Energy had two transfer stations that they were decommissioning. I was able to talk to Excel. They had one on Fairfax. This is the one we're discussing now. And they also had one in Westwood, the Westwood neighborhood. So we were able to acquire those two parcels for $50,000. I attended some public meetings, the Greater Park Hill community meetings, to let people know that I was working on this, trying to acquire these properties, and that our goal, the Parks Department's goal, was to build a park in this community that basically has a park desert. There's not a lot of parks in this neighborhood. So this was something that we were just trying to do and trying to do to build this little pocket park. So we were able to do that. In 2016, H&M Capital approached the city and said, hey, we are redeveloping the east side of the block. You guys have a parcel on the west side, and that's the map that you have on 29th and Fairfax. We would like to contribute to building a park on this block. We want to make our development better. We want to make the block better. And so we started discussions with them, and we talked about a possible swap of land. They take the west side parcel, and then on the east side, they would actually work with us to build a park within that block. And so we've moved forward, and this is where we're at now. So they would actually give us $650,000 if this moves forward. $100,000 would be immediately available for us to actually move forward with a design. At this time, we basically just have some concept designs. The city did have 4 meetings in the community to work on some concepts. Also, the Park Hill community had 4 meetings. The Greater Park Hill community actually had 3 meetings. They came up with some concepts. These are actually pretty good concepts, and they've got some really good bones to actually start the actual design process to move forward to eventually get to a construction document. Right now, we do not have any design that is finalized or anything. So this moving forward would actually give us funding, which we do not have at this time, to actually start the design of this project. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring up.
Thank you. does that conclude the staff report then?
Yeah, for now, yes. If there's any other questions, we are here.
Thank you. We do have 29 individuals signed up to speak this evening. This is a 1-hour courtesy hearing, so we'll have to stop after 1 hour. So while you do have 3 minutes, if you're saying things that someone else has said, or you can say them quickly, please do, to allow time for us to get through as many of those 29 as we possibly can in 1 hour. I'm also going to ask, if you're sitting in this first bench, if you could please find another seat, because I'm going to call up 5 speakers at a time so that we can try and get through people quickly and don't lose a lot of time turning over. So when I do call your name, come up to this front bench and then be ready in that order that I call you to pop right up when the speaker in front of you is done. I will now call the first 5 speakers. I do apologize if I mispronounce your name. And then the first speaker can step up to the microphone. We'll get started right away. So the first 5 that we have is Robyn Fishman, Christine O'Connor, Jesse Paris, Benjamin Scharf, and Alison Larson. If you could all 5 come to the front bench. And Robyn Fishman, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. I really did not want to be first, but I'll go for it. My name is Robyn Fishman. I live at 2665 Forest Street. It is roughly 4 houses down the alley from this development. I've watched a lot of change in this neighborhood. And for those of you who tend to vote with your registered neighborhood organization, I want to really speak to you tonight. I am a former board member of the Greater Park Hill Community. I am the former executive director of Greater Park Hill Community. I'm very familiar with how they work, and I have great respect for the members here tonight who volunteer and work very hard with them. I typically agree with them, but on this case, I feel like they have really missed the boat. They have done absolutely nothing whatsoever to survey the housing or membership that lives directly closest to this park. I'm 4 houses away, as you will hear, and I hope you will ask. The people that come up to speak opposed tend to live farther away from the development. I and my neighbors live very close to the development. We are most affected by it. They did nothing to survey the membership. I have participated in park design programs through them, where I had a very open mind about whether the park should be on the east or west side of the street. I was told we were looking at a ballpark of $750,000 to fundraise to privately build the park on the west side, which I actually volunteered to do. But as my mind started to change and I started to lean toward the east side, gradually I was left out of that process. I was no longer included on emails to even deliver flyers about those meetings. And it's very clear that they have a very specific agenda about wanting it only on the west side of the street. The park itself will be built between residents and a retail development. On the west side, it will be Long Table Brewery, which is a great establishment, but it'll be between retail and housing, regardless of which side of the street it's on. Some of the concerns that have been raised have been about gentrification issues, people feeling welcome to the park, and will it really feel like a city park versus a plaza? I feel strongly that through the work of the developers and through the work of the neighborhood, we can work with the city to make sure that it feels very much like a park that is open to all, and make sure that the permitting is through the city, to make sure that it feels open and welcoming. I have certainly participated in processes where I have encouraged naming it after a Park Hill resident, and making sure that it is something that is less than a plaza but open to everyone. My concern is if we wait for the west side, we are fundraising probably for a private park, which those funds could be put to much better use, such as helping the people that have...
I'm sorry, but your time is up.
Oh.
Thank you very much. Next up, Christine O'Connor.
That went too fast. All right. Well, anyway, I'm in favor of the swap.
My name is Christina O'Connor. I live at 144 South Ulster Street in Denver. I'm going to ask you guys a rhetorical question to start with, so you can just hold this in your head while I'm speaking. But how do you expect me as a voter to support a sales tax for increasing revenue to parks by 47 million over our 74 million if you're giving away park assets? Just hold that for a minute, because this is really serious, this giveaway deal. I mean, the developer, as other people will explain is getting money hand over fist. He's going to benefit by increased property values on the east side. He's doubling his holdings on the west side. He can rezone. You all know that's going to come. I mean, we weren't born yesterday. So I'd like you to think about that. I also have a serious ask for you, something that you could do. And I think that the city and parks have bent over backwards to work with the developer and, get an agreement in writing. Meanwhile, the community, which worked really, really hard for over 2 years, has no guarantees in writing, none. Greater Park Hill asked for a board to be set up, community board. That's not even done. There's no guarantee that the extra profits will go into this board for maintenance of the park. There's a number of things it can do. I've heard your Ludi meeting. I know that many of you have valid concerns about gentrification and who this park will serve. And being on Lowry, where we have a plaza in the middle of the shopping center, I guarantee you it's not an open public park. This one also isn't labeled a park. And I know DPR is going to take control, but if you really think that there isn't going to be racial profiling and there aren't going to be neighbors and restaurants complaining if it is really publicly used, then I don't think you really know anything about parks. So I'd like to ask that you postpone this until you've required the mayor and the administration to make agreements with the neighbors as part of this deal. And I know some of you are going to say, oh, we can't do that. That's out of our purview. Then why have a city council? If you can't direct the mayor, I'm just not sure what our purpose is. So there's other people who are going to talk, but I also have concerns about the future of our park. I love plazas. I've been to Siena. That plaza is wonderful. We have them, they're all over New York City. But there's no guarantee that this is going to feel like a public park. And there's no rationale in the game plan, oh, we need to have a park.
I'm sorry, but your time is up. Thank you very much. Jesse Paris.
Jesse Paris, Black Star Action Movement for Self-Defense, and the City Council at Large candidate for 2019. Black Star Action Movement for Self-Defense, we are a for-profit, which is for the poor, working poor, elderly, and senior citizens and the homeless, and those that are just showing up broke. We do not agree with this at all. As a Denver native, I grew up in Park Hill. This neighborhood is being gentrified just like the rest of the neighborhoods throughout this whole city. And just to sit here and listen to y'all try to justify this by saying that this is going to be a public park, all while having an urban camping ban which criminalizes the homeless on the streets of Denver and makes it illegal for them to even sleep in the park. You think that the answer is more parks instead of affordable housing. This place could be used to build affordable housing, transitional housing, all the above, but instead you want to build another park like we don't already have enough parks already, like we don't already have enough dog parks already. We have more dog parks than we have public restrooms in the whole city of Denver. We are definitely against this. You are being very disingenuous in the way that you are going about this process. The community has literally told you they do not want this done, and you still want to go through with it. You still are in bed with the bedbugs, the business developers, and you still are following the lead of Michael Hancock, who is not fit to serve. So, Denver Homeless Out Loud, Black Star Action Movement, we are against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Benjamin Scharf.
Benjamin Scharf. I live on 26th block of Forest, so half block away from the development. I am in favor of the land swap. I have attended the meetings, and to me, it is a funding issue. There's funds available for a park, and I have not heard from the GPHC any form of funding available that they have. They just have been said that they will find the funding available for that. To me, as a neighbor of the park with young children, I would like to use this park. I have seen this sit for 2 years without any development, and I'll keep it brief with that, but I am in favor of the land swap.
Thank you. Next up is Alison Larson, and while Alison's coming up, I'm going to call the next 5 to come to this front bench. Christina Cryer, Karen Ingerfetti, Jason Klinelser, Blair Taylor, and Allison Shaw. Sorry about some of those names. I apologize. Alison Larson.
Hi, I'm Allie Larson. I'm a resident in Park Hill. As you can see, this is a heated issue in our neighborhood. Park Hill is experiencing gentrification at a massive, rapid rate. The people that are here opposed to the land swap, as I am, are not opposed to a park. We're opposed to the way this process has been handled, which has been extremely inequitably and with no transparency. I am urging you, as our city council members, to recognize that the city is paying attention to how we are gentrifying. Are we doing it respectfully? Are we doing it thoughtfully? Are we thinking about citizens who don't take online surveys, which is one of the ways that they were doing community feedback here? Are they showing up to meetings? Not necessarily, and we need to be listening to all of our community members. If you walk around Park Hill, I will tell you that the school a few blocks to the east of this has an FRL rate of over 90%. The school several blocks to the south has an FRL rate of 13%. Park Hill is very divided. There are people here that will tell you that it is one Park Hill, but it is not. And these types of things happening continue to make that divide even greater. We are asking you to put a hold on this. Recognize that there were other offers on the table to develop this land that were not given consideration. That has not been mentioned here. There were developers or people that were bringing money to the table as well. As you heard, this whole thing was started because this developer came to the table, made the offer, and nothing else was considered. That should be a red flag to you, City Council, as our city is gentrifying. Developers should not hold the power. When we were at the previous committee hearings, the developer held all of the power. Happy Haynes even mentioned the term a gift, that this was a gift from the developer. That should not be happening in city buildings. We should not be talking about gifts from developers that actually are not gifts. We are giving the developer a lot of money. This would be a plot of land in the middle of a fancy development in the middle of North Park Hill. North Park Hill is a special place. It still has some diversity. It still has a rich culture. If you have not been on this block recently, there has been a long-standing Black-owned liquor store on the south side of the block that many of our neighbors have complained about because it gets frequented by lower-income African-American patrons. Yet a brewery was built at the north end of this block, and no one seems to mind that there are drunk white rich people hanging out on that corner as well. I just want to point out that this is a sensitive subject. We care about our neighbors. We care about what is happening here. I'm a longtime resident. I care about neighbors, and I care about how we as a city are doing things. Are we doing it well? Are we doing it thoughtfully? This process has not been done equitably, nor thoughtfully, nor transparently. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Christina Cryer.
Hello. As you mentioned, my name is Christina Cryer, and I live with my husband and my 4- and 6-year-old boy at the corner of 26th and Forest. I'm also representing multiple other Park Hill families that weren't able to be here, including my cousin's entire family and my brother's entire family, all of which live within a block of this proposed park, whether it's on the east side or the west side. I've been to multiple meetings now trying to kind of weigh the pros and cons and hear from both sides. And in the simplest form, I mean, it just seems fairly obvious that it is a win for the neighborhood. And we get a park sooner rather than later. The last information and data that I received was that the park could be 5 to 10 years down the road if we do not go through with the land swap. I don't know if that's still the updated numbers. We save taxpayer dollars by helping, partnering with the development. We still keep the entire piece of land with the city of Denver, and the park is going to be identical, whether it's on the east side or the west side. I think what we're hearing is frustrations that aren't necessarily related 100% to the park. I've heard that there's been some mistrust, or perhaps people wanted to be a little bit more included, and maybe that's the case, and perhaps things could have developed better, but that doesn't change the fact that The park is going to be either on the east side or the west side, and that we can have it sooner without using taxpayer dollars if we go through with the swap. I've also heard a lot of issues or concerns might be the better term on the development itself, and that is not what's up for vote right now. We can't necessarily change what's going on around the park, whether it's on the east side or the west side. We talk about things that are there right now. Whether that's going to be there in the future or not, I don't know, but those are things that is not being voted on right now and things that we can't change. I also don't think that there's an entire person in this room that doesn't think that there's room for improvement on this block. You'll continue to hear from other people that live even closer than I do and some of the issues that they face. I know that we have faced some issues as well on my block. And I also understand that change needs to be thoughtful and that it really does need to benefit the neighborhood. And I think that the process has been going on for months and months. So I think that suggesting that not a lot of thought has not gone into this yet would be false and wrong. And I also think that we can use this as an opportunity to shape the block. I've reached out to, my neighbors, I've reached out to, councilmen, I've reached out to the developer, and I've reached out to, on a couple occasions, the greater Park Hill community. And I've had a lot of conversations and tried to bring up some different ideas, whether it's bringing a social enterprise into the development or creating different park activities. But the greater Park Hill group has not exactly been open to those conversations.
Thank you very much. Next up, Karen Ingerfetti.
You were doomed from the beginning. It's Karen Ingerfetti.
I was not even close. I apologize.
Live in Park Hill, 2258 Cremeria Street. Grew up at 23rd and Bel Air from 1970. My cousin lives on Fairfax and 26th. I'm opposed to this swap. In the developer's pictures of the development, it looks like a 3 to 4 story building overlooking a private piece of land. Does not feel very hospitable, and that has been a very key point of this. This is not hospitable to the neighborhood, and it is not respectful of the neighborhood. Just because you live close by, it's a park. You don't own the park a block from your house. That's a neighborhood park. It is a park desert, so it should serve the greater area. I work at Park Hill Clinic. It's a Denver Health Clinic. I'm a physician. Most of my patients live in the neighborhood. They would benefit from having more open space. I think the city has a great asset here, and they should think twice before giving away this open space. I know the developer would want to put another building, and looking at how it would be, the park would then be surrounded by 3 sides, because then the developer would have the opportunity to put in another large building. So it would be 3 large buildings surrounding a very small park. I have concerns about the heat island aspect of it. When I went to the horse and pony shows of the that the Parks Department put on, giving us 4 options and no input into anything other than comment on these 4 options. They would not allow that a playground was okay, and there was a lot of what we came up with as a community at those meetings was discounted. One more thing. Or maybe in the interest of time, I will bow out.
All right. Thank you very much. Next up, Jason Klinelser.
Very good. Stuff. Hi, my name is Jason Klinelser. I live at 2615 Forest, so less than a block away. We've been in the neighborhood since, 01 at 29th and Holly, and then here at 26th and Forest since 01. And obviously I've seen a lot of change of the city. I'm sure anybody that's lived here for 20 years plus, you've seen a lot of change in the city. This block has not seen much change. In fact, the only change that has come has been through buildings becoming empty, subsequently encouraging crime and delinquency in our neighborhoods. I've seen cops shoot at kids in my neighborhood. I've seen other kids shoot at other kids. I've seen a tremendous amount of drug use and And that's not what this neighborhood's about. This neighborhood's about community, it's about family, it's about being respectful to its neighbors. And because of the dilapidation that happened on that block over the years, it's not turned into an asset that the community can really value. The developer has taken on his wings to put this in play, put attainable housing in the market, and he wants to give the community $650,000 at the cost of a $25,000 lot that the city paid for. Congratulations, Scott. That's a hell of a good land deal. The reality is that the city's not out any money with this. They're out $25,000, but they get a $625,000 asset because of it. The city did a tremendous job of really programming this project, finding out the ins and outs of what makes a park community. And I commend their group for really being forward-thinking of finding the assets that would make that essential part of our neighborhood and our street. Because I do think it matters that you live there, because I've seen it. I've been awoken by gunfire too many times in that neighborhood to have it keep being a problem. And the fact of the matter is that if you live at 20th and Glencoe, or if you live in Lowry, you don't know the issues that come down here. We do. I've seen it. I've rolled up my windows at night because of it. So I honestly, hopefully you guys consider that as part of this thing and respect somebody that's making an investment of millions and millions of dollars to make our neighborhood not only better, to take away some of the assets that weren't being used and really make our community a piece that we can all be proud of.
Thank you. Next up, Blair Taylor.
Hello. My name is Blair Taylor, and I live at 2028 Glencoe Street. I am the District 5 representative for the Greater Park Hill Community Board. The Greater Park Hill Community Board is made up of more than 20 residents of Park Hill. We have not officially changed our position made in November of 2017 opposing the Fairfax land swap. The city has demonstrated determination to force this deal no matter the discrepancy of value or lack of foresight. This deal gives land to a developer whose tenants on either side will clearly have the advantage of this plaza for their use. The developer's own website furthers this evidence by having both designed it without any neighborhood input or actually naming it the Square at Park Hill Commons. That's not a public pocket park for Park Hill. The Greater Park Hill Chair requested in July a pause for decision makers to include provisions which would provide equal opportunity for added community value. Some of the things that we requested were building the park in the first phase of development. Right now, the contract states the park will be developed in 2021. That's 6 years from when it was purchased. That would have given the community plenty of time to look at GO funding, which is what Westwood Park, which was completed last weekend used. Building the community-produced design. It was a process that was inclusive of a really diverse group of residents. Establish a neighborhood board that would oversee and ensure the park rules accommodated all of the residents. Establish good neighbor agreements with all of the adjacent tenants. Provide some truly affordable housing in perpetuity for those residents who are displaced. And promote leases to minority-owned businesses. One of the residents has drawn a comparison to this deal being reminiscent of the purchase of Manhattan Island. The natives are given $24 worth of trinkets and told to be thankful in exchange for their loss of land, culture, and livelihood. I hope that you have truly considered the repercussions of gentrification in a neighborhood that is so rich with history that you've not chosen to sell out to make the rich richer. We hope that the vote that you cast today reflects to your constituents your value of community, because in May we will be casting our votes.
Thank you. Next up, Allison Shaw, and I'm going to call the next five up: Tracy McDermott, Karen Williams, Shanta Harrison, Tiffany Knapsnyder, and Hank Bootz. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Allison Shaw. I live at 3014 Forest, so just 2 blocks from this development. I think that there are some very significant issues in our neighborhood regarding gentrification, and a very strong minority in the neighborhood that is vehemently anti-development and anti-developer. And I think that some of these issues are getting mixed in with the park. For some people, these are inseparable. I actually favor the park being built by the developer and being part of a larger complex that enables the development to include commercial restaurants and cafes as part of the development. Without the park on that side, we lose the opportunity to have a new commercial expansion of that neighborhood. I think that the concerns that people have are ones that people in our community can come together to address and work on. I think that we are a strong community of committed people, many long-term residents and new residents, who could actually commit to making this a neighborhood park by working on all these kinds of issues that people have raised who are opposed to it. They don't require us not to build the park to undertake these kinds of community works. Financially, I think it's a great deal for us to get the park built with a developer who's willing to put the money into it. Does he benefit? Yes, he does. Is that a zero-sum game that means we don't benefit? No, I don't think so. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next up, Tracy McDermott. All right, Karen Williams.
Hello, I'm Karen Williams. I live at 2623 Forest, half block from the proposed park. I am for the land swap. I think, as many others have said, it's a great deal for the city. I think the Parks and Rec money that they would spend on the west side could better be spent in other neighborhoods where they don't have someone giving them $650,000. I attended a meeting Councilman Herndon put on way back in October of last year, 2 other park meetings, 3 Greater Park Hill meetings. The developer has said that he will work with the design the community came up with, which I appreciated. I'm a senior citizen in the neighborhood. I would love to be able to take grandchildren there, and I just think it would be a great deal for the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Shanta Harrison. Shanta Harrison. All right, Tiffany Kansmiter. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, thank you all for hearing from neighbors. And I also wanted to thank Councilwoman Kniech for coming out and speaking with some neighbors who are for the land swap for the park to be built on the east side of the street. I live at 2830 Forest. It's mid-block, just a block away from where the development is happening. I'm a Park Hill resident for 12 years. I love this neighborhood. I love Park Hill, and I feel I'm here tonight because I just feel sad at what this has become. I feel, unfortunately, that it's become a racial issue. I believe that it has pitted neighbors against neighbors, and I have to say that I think that the Greater Park Hill Community Board has been a big part of that. I have friends and neighbors and people that I care about on both sides of this issue, and so it's hard to get up here and talk, to talk about that. But I feel strongly that the issues that are being brought up and the concerns that are being brought up are good. It's good conversation. I think that we need to be having more of these conversations. I think people are very sensitive to the issues of gentrification in Park Hill, specifically North Park Hill. I have several neighbors of color who I have had discussions with about this, both for and against the land swap. And so, again, I think these conversations are really important. So I'm thankful that we have an issue to talk about. What I don't think is that this park and where it is placed on the east or the west side will, A, provide healing for those issues, solve the issue at hand. And I think what we're dealing with now is we need to move forward. I think we've been at so many of these meetings. We need to move forward with a park that has funding in place. It has a timeline in place to serve our community better. I have 3 young kids, and I'm worried about the safety of the block. And like so many people have mentioned, there has not been change on the block for years. So while I don't think this is maybe the development is not the perfect solution for the block of Fairfax. I recognize that, and I want to be sensitive to that, but that is what is happening. And so I feel strongly that a park can serve our community, can serve our neighbors, and I just feel like already it's been, you know, almost set in stone that it's going to be inclusive if it's on the west side and exclusive if it's on the east side, and I just don't feel like that's the case. Thank you so much.
And could you just state your name for the record?
Tiffany Kansmiter. I
Thank
get
you.
really excited.
All right, Hank Bootz, and well, Hank is coming up. The next five, if you could come to the front: Brad Burdock, Lamone Noles, Mora Styles, Maria Flora, and Paul Noqwist. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Hank Bootz, and I agree with Tiffany that the process divided the neighborhood on this issue. And the reason it divided the neighborhood is because it was a very dishonest, undisclosed process. When we have heard there is a letter of intent, there's not a letter of intent. The city is going to build this park. The developer is going to build this park. We've heard so much. I suppose I'm supposed to watch my language here, but you know what we've heard is dishonesty. Dishonesty from Parks and Recs, dishonesty from where's the contract on this deal? And all of a sudden it shows up. Now, everybody in this room, I got a feeling if you're selling your house, you want to get as much as you can for it. And there is nothing in this process to indicate that the city had any interest in maximizing what it could get from this land. It sold to one person. It didn't put a for sale sign up. It didn't ask for bids. There's no fiduciary duty whatsoever to the people that actually own that land, which one of them is me. So I'm very disappointed, and I hope that if the city continues to swap land, parkland, what could be parkland, for apartment buildings, then we'll have honesty next time. We'll have people that come to us to begin with and say, we have people interested in buying this. Is there anybody else interested in buying this? That's how I've always sold a car, and maybe that's too difficult a concept, but I'm really let down, and this was not a clean, honest, forthright deal for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Brad Burdock.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brad Burdock. I live at 2631 Forest, about a half a block from the proposed development. I reiterate all of the things that everyone before me has said in support of the park. We've had concerns. I've been there for about 8 years, and I can honestly say that I've heard immediate sirens or sirens as a result of gun violence from that block more than a dozen times in the last 8 years. So anything that will bring people together on that block, as far as businesses, foot traffic, will be an improvement for the block, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lamone Noles.
Hi, my name's Lamone Noles. I'm a Park Hill resident off 30th and Cherry, and I'm also the president of City Park Friends and Neighbors. This is my third courtesy hearing concerning park issues. The only issue I have, or the concern I have, is the process where the civic engagement was not as strong as it could be. We do need development, we do need improvements in the neighborhood, but the citizens who are there, long-term citizens like myself who know the history of the community, we really should have been more engaged from the beginning. So I was really upset when I saw the construction fence. I didn't know that the deal had even taken place. I read about it in the Greater Park Hill News, and so, you know, it's just been very stressful for the last year and a half, where the citizens just don't feel like they've been respected. So what I suggest in the future is that the civic engagement be stronger. Thank you.
Thank you. Mora Styles.
Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Mora Styles. I live at 2859 Forest Street, which is directly behind where the park is planned to be, if it is going to be on the east side of Fairfax Street. My battery's dying here, so my notes. I just want to say a couple extra things on top of what's already been said tonight. I really have been appreciating the conversation that has come up because of this issue, the conversation and the dialogue that does need to be moving forward in our community. It is valuable, it is rich, it is something we should all be a part of. One of the benefits of having this park be on the east side is that we see that happening in the very near future versus an undisclosed, unknown date. We really would like to have this be a much more cared for, eyes on it, watched block for the safety. I have 3 children, 14, 12, and 9, for the safety of them on this block. I just also want to say that we do hear and care deeply about the history of pain and exclusion and marginalization that this kind of discussion triggers in our community. The issue of inclusion will be an issue that we need to care about, whether the park is on the west side or the east side of Fairfax. And our hope as neighbors, as we've been discussing this as neighbors, is for the forward movement of completing the park on the east side in the very near future as a space for interaction and healing to happen. If this can get moving forward, it creates a space where the conversations and the interaction can begin, rather than there just being an empty space that reminds us of the polarization. We as neighbors are committed to lean into those conversations. We moved to Park Hill 11 years ago because we wanted to raise our boys in a racially, ethnically, socioeconomically diverse community, and I truly hope that my boys and all of our kids can see us as a neighborhood and as a community carry the shared value of it being really up to all of us to be inclusive and to care for our neighbors. So again, we are for the land swap, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Maria Flora.
Good evening. Maria Flora, speaking against the measure. I'm a Park Hill resident. Denver Parks and Recreation advocates for the land swap as a way to build the pocket park fast, cheap, and good. But it's none of those things, and I urge you to vote against it. If the swap is approved, we insist that DPR build the park that was designed by the community. The swap is not fast. Happy Haynes was at Greater Park Hill earlier this year and said that the pocket park would likely be built in 2 years, so say the beginning of 2020. The city isn't going to start construction under this contract until any time before October 31, 2019, and later if this contract drags out. Could build a park in the same time on the west side. The swap plan is not cheap. One of the major selling points was this $650,000 so-called donation by HM Capital for park design and construction. But HM is getting value out of this. They're going to get increased rents because the park is embedded in the development. They're going to get a tax deduction. They're getting under this contract a $10 a month lease to store up to 10,000 cubic yards of dirt on what's now the plaza. And there's a great deal of value in that. That lease is open-ended. It doesn't end until construction starts. And it also saves what it would have spent developing the plaza as it was initially depicted in its plans. But most of all, the swap plan is not good. The neighbors are concerned that the plaza, embedded in HM's upscale dense development, will not be the park that the neighborhood wants. The Greater Park Hill RNO held 3 community design meetings where anybody could speak their mind unmoderated. First and foremost, the community wanted play features for all age kids, specifically swings and climbing structures. A park design was created and given to council with a conventional play structure. DPR duplicated the park process, came out with a set of plans that did not have a single swing or slide, no play structures other than rocks, and one of the plans didn't even have any turf. We're disappointed. We're reduced to insisting on swings and slides. So to ensure that the neighborhood gets the park it wants, we request that DPR give the RNO a seat at the table in the park design process, and we insist that it build the park that was designed by the community. Thank you. I have pictures of the community design. I'll give them to the clerk for distribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Paul Noqwist.
Thank you. My name is Paul Noqwist. I live at 2885 Dexter. We're 3 blocks west of the proposed development. I'm here to speak for myself and my family and my neighbors in favor of the land swap. I think we just believe in the facts of it, that it's a like-for-like exchange of land, that there's a $650,000 allotment that the development or developer is giving to the city to build that park. And like was said before, the money that Denver Parks and Rec would have to use then can be used in another underserved community. I think we just need to look at the actual facts of the land swap, and unfortunately we have to put some of this other stuff on the wayside until those issues can be addressed in another manner. But for the land swap itself, we are in favor of the swap. We want this thing going. We want the block to change as quickly as possible and get this thing moving and become an asset for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the next five up. Sandrea Robnett, Dan Shaw, Eric Penn, Darren Bloom, and Miguel Ceballos-Ruiz. Is there Andrea or Sandra? Sandra. I apologize.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Robnett, and I live at 2875 Bird Street, and I oppose the land swap. I have been in attendance at several neighborhood meetings addressing the land swap and placement of the park on 28th and Fairfax. I've heard comments made by several residents expressing support for the land swap because of their belief that the land swap will ease some of their safety concerns. As an African-American Latina, I too have concerns. I feel that not only are these comments racially biased, but will perpetuate the pattern of racial harassment we people of color are experiencing in the country today. I have concerns that those who express these safety concerns, those moving into the development, and specifically the retailers that are proposed to surround this public park, will be given unjustified reasons to harass, call the cops, and unnecessarily risk the lives of people of color. Despite the surge of gentrification in Park Hill, there is still a strong presence of people of color. We long-term residents should not, under any circumstance, live in fear of our new non-ethnic neighbors. We shouldn't have to worry that the police will be called on us because we want to have a birthday party or a barbecue in what will be deemed a public park. And let me just say, when we are in public parks, our barbecues are not the same as other people's barbecues. My music is loud. My music is in a different language. My music is not only in English, it's not country. I listen to salsa, it's merengue, it's cumbia, and it's in Portuguese because I speak Portuguese fluently. By placing the park within the development and allowing the land swap, the city would not only allow but encourage the harassment we are experiencing today. But let me be clear, I'm prepared for the harassment. I strongly believe that by allowing the swap, Denver will soon be on the news and social media with our own permit patties and barbecue Beckies. So please, City Council, developers, and future residents and retailers, know that if there is one, and I mean one, unwarranted harassment phone call made on a single person of color, we will witness protests far-reaching anything Denver has ever experienced. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Dan Shaw.
Hi, I'm Dan Shaw. I live at 30th and Forest, and that's very hard to follow. I think that this is a really very difficult issue for Park Hill, and a couple of people have mentioned that this has brought forth some really important things that need to be resolved, discussed. I would just urge City Council, in whatever it does tonight, that a process be embedded to continue the conversation. There was a very good conversation. There was an excellent moderator that one of Councilman Hurden's convened several meetings about the park. There was a moderator from UCD, and he did a great job really enabling people, giving people a voice. And I think that really, more than anything else for me about this, East or West, is that it's an opportunity for us to have that opportunity to talk about these things. And so if wherever the park is, there has to be a really intentional process for designing it and for creating something where it is really truly inclusive. So I mean, I think that's really what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Penn. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Eric Penn.
Is that right?
Yep.
All right. My name is Eric Penn. I'm a community advocate and a resident in Montbello. Some may wonder why a resident of Montbello would show up at a parks meeting in Park Hill, especially when I have a pretty nice neighborhood park. I can walk a block. I go to Silverman Park. I can see families there having barbecues, the quinceañeras. The street's always packed. They play football. We have a pavilion. We have a playground, swings. And that's why I'm here, is because all of these things are things that this city or this neighborhood is asking to be put into their neighborhood, so that they can experience the things that we experience in my neighborhood in Montbello. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that's what this community deserves. It is a park desert, which is ironic, being named Park Hill. But there are some things that happen in this process that I think we've heard tonight brought out some of the disdain in the neighborhood, some of the ugly sides of people. During the community meetings, people felt that they were pitted against each other by the moderators that were hired at a $30,000 expense. They felt that there were issues of gentrification that helped divide people based on race, and that the city wasn't clear and wasn't transparent in its efforts to make this park a reality. So I think what people are saying is true. We have two issues here. One is about what does an actual community park look like? What is the intention of parks in this city? What is the purpose for putting them where we put them? And what do we intend people to use them for? And then how does the city council, how do the city agencies actually interact with the residents? What is it that they expect from the residents who followed through in all the community meetings that they were asked to go to? They got resources to build architectural plans and designs. They went through all the processes that they're asked to do and still came to find out through an open record request that a deal had already been signed with a developer. And so I asked the city council to look inward to create new processes in outreach to the community, to develop new procedures when land development is taking place, and to vote this measure down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Darren Bloom.
Good evening. My name is Darren Bloom. I live on 29th and Fairfax, 2 houses up from where this commercial development will be. I work from home. I have multiple dogs. I'm out on that block every single day. Whether it's summer or winter, freezing, hot, doesn't matter. I think it's imperative that we approve this park. We let the construction go through. We let the developer proceed with the plans that they've outlined with the commercial on top of the residential, the mixed use, which will bring a vibrancy to that part of the street and the community. I understand there's some concerns from the long-term residents, and I think in my interaction with the developer, he's been quite accommodating and understanding of some of the issues there. And I think if there was perhaps some more dialogue, we can get through this. But the short of it is, I would like to go forward with the swap and get this thing built.
Thank you. Next up, Miguel Ceballos-Ruiz.
Miguel Ceballos-Ruiz. You know, I've heard a lot at this meeting so far. I've heard some residents urging for broken windows policies, which are failed. I've heard some colorblind racism. And I've heard advocacy for certain things that, you know, that we have to wait to talk about gentrification, that we have to wait to have the conversation about the displacement of communities of color. If we can't have those conversations here in front of council, where can we have those conversations? I have heard a city council Parks and Recreation director say that there is no money to build this park, and that the $650,000 to build this park by the developer is a gift. I object wholeheartedly to that characterization. This land swap is no gift. The way that this deal was made and is being pushed through council is no gift. The way that Greater Park Hills R&O and the community was sidelined was no gift. And please notice that all of the people of color who testified here were against this. This bill is not about a park. but is about a park, but we cannot ignore what else is being built. The development being built, the housing, does not include any affordable housing, much less low-income housing. Initially, the developer wanted, I understand, to make this a private park. That is regrettable, but more than that, it is telling. Telling of who will be welcomed at this park, who will have the police called on them, whose children will, in the words of Ta-Nehisi Coates, command entire sidewalks with their tricycles. People of color are being kicked out of the city by what some have regrettably called natural market forces. There is another term for this which I refer to it as economic racism. The concern from the community and the communities of color is the exponential displacement of communities of color from areas that we have lived in, areas where our roots have taken hold and grown deep. I regret this bill and I urge a no vote. If this were a development that had sustainable, affordable units, substantial affordable units, I might feel differently. What we need are affirmative action-like policies that act as a tourniquet on the loss of people of color from Denver. Policies that require all medium to large housing developments to include affordable housing units. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll invite Ben Maxwell, Patricia Yosaki, Matt Emons, and Jeanette Fidel up to the front. And Ben Maxwell, you're up.
Hi, my name is Ben Maxwell. I'm with HM Capital. I'm the owner of HM Capital and also a PHC mixed use. I just wanted to come tonight and say thank you all for your time. Thank everybody in the community for their input. We're very regretful that this has turned into a fight over gentrification. We came into this. I used to live in the Park Hill neighborhood at 30th and Cherry, and we came into this with let's do a neat development that supports retail, that supports local businesses, things that are owned locally in the neighborhood. People can live in the neighborhood, people can work in the neighborhood, people can own a business, have a restaurant, things of those natures. Our biggest goal with this project is to unite the community, so it's very sad that that's gone the opposite direction, and we hope that we can do whatever we can to repair those relationships. We are looking, we're not trying to do, even though, good design does not necessarily mean upscale development. We're looking at trying to keep all of our rents at an affordable rate for both retail as well as residential. We are looking for small businesses. We have turned down large national franchises to go in this block because we really want locally owned Park Hill, Denver businesses to operate in this space. It's been our goal that this is a community center for North Park Hill, and I'll yield the rest of my time to the neighbors who have a lot to say.
Thank you. Next up, Patricia Yosaki.
Thank you. My name is Patricia Yosaki. I live in Northeast Denver. I'm on the board of Taking Neighborhood Health to Heart, and I have been working with Greater Park Hill community for the past 3 years in terms of their sustainability efforts. I am a social worker by training. I have been working on environmental justice issues in Northeast Denver for the past, I'd say, 10 years. I really urge and echo a number of sentiments that there are strong feelings that this ordinance and the action of the transfer of land across the street has lacked transparency with the neighborhood. There are a number of people of color and older residents who have lived in the Park Hill area for the past 40 to 50 years that have very strong feelings that City Council and the city is not concerned about the issues that residents are concerned about. It is not a matter of being for or against a park or park systems, but it is a matter of having the voice and listening to people who live in the area on the kind of park that they'd like to see. There is a concern that what will be built will exclude longtime residents and people who have been a part of Park Hill for a number of years being comfortable to be able to utilize the outdoor area. And despite all of the best intent of developers, I think this is a major issue of concern. I won't take up any more time, but I urge the City Council to listen to, this is just a small fraction representing the voices that feel very strongly about this issue in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt Emons.
Thank you. My name is Matt Emons. I live at 2883 Forest Street. I back up immediately to the proposed development project on Fairfax. I lived there for 15 years. It's the only home my kids have known. I have a daughter started east this morning, a son at McAuliffe, and then a dozen kids on the half block that we run around in the front yards with and have since they were very small. I want to thank Councilwoman Kinich for coming out today and meeting with some of the immediate neighbors around the project. Perhaps less vocal, but no less passionate about the project. We are for the swap almost to a home. A lot of emotional speeches, a lot of emotional topics, many that I honestly cannot relate to. But I'm a more pragmatic person and have a more pragmatic approach to this. And there are a series of facts here that cannot be disputed. One is there will be a park on this block. Parks and Rec is committed to that. East or west side, there will be a 15,000 square foot park there. It will be eventually flanked by commercial development on either side. That issue remains the same. And it will be built and maintained by the park, or by the City of Parks and Rec. The issues are, when does it get built, who builds it, and who pays for it? We feel like this is a bird in the hand with the developer stepping up to pay for it, to provide the funds for Parks and Rec to do it. The design of the park is something that I am not concerned about, frankly. Open space, grass, trees, play structures, it doesn't matter to me, but it bears repeating that this park will be between commercial developments, no matter where it is, be the same size, no matter where it is. It will be on the block, regardless. So if we focus on those, I think we can reach a conclusion that this is good for the neighborhood long-term and good for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Jeanette Fidel. Jeanette Fidel. All right. Thank you all very much.